us in that. So now I want to introduce our guest speaker. Many of you know her, Reverend Margie Brach. She's been a longtime friend of Unity of Santa Rosa. She and her husband, Bob Brach, who live in Sacramento, came a long way this morning, have a Unity ministry called Unity in Action, and where they go to many churches and offer inspiring messages. So welcome, and she's going to give us a lesson today on the power of understanding.
She wanted me to do a little something before she started.
Yes.
Oh, no, this was before the meditation.
Before the meditation.
Oh, all right, so I'm going to go.
Thank you so much. Oh, good morning, everyone. Oh, it's good to be here. Always feels like coming home. And welcome to our new friends who are here today, too. It's great to have you here. Yeah, when Reverend Patricia asked me to come and fill in today and said we were focusing on these 12 powers that we know in Unity, it got me thinking back. It got me thinking to when I first was traveling to Unity Village outside of Kansas City in Missouri, and I was on fire for Unity. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to know more. I wanted to put this stuff into practice in my life. And I remember going to the bookstore, and there were all these books attributed to the co-founders of Unity, Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore, and I thought, I want them all. I want all those books. And I couldn't buy them all right then, but I was very excited, and the one I had heard a lot about before was the 12 Powers, a book that is Charles Fillmore's book. And I thought, okay. So that was one of the first ones I got, and I brought it home with me. And, it's just sitting and reading it, I had trouble sometimes putting all the ideas together as I was going through that book. And I had the thought, and this was back a while ago, I had the thought to record the contents of the book in my own voice so I could listen to it, because I love auditory learning. And so I had my little cassette tapes. This tells you how long ago this was. And I remember listening and listening and listening to that book. And it just took it from intellectual knowledge right down here to my heart. And one of the chapters in there that spoke to me the most was one on understanding, this power of understanding that we've all got in us. It's all accessible and available to us to tap into at any time. And as I was learning more from that chapter, I realized, there's a more common word in our culture for understanding, and it's intuition. Not just limited to women, everybody's got it. And I really appreciated that in that chapter, there was a distinction between intellectual understanding, which is a wonderful thing, thank goodness. Thank goodness we can learn things intellectually. But this idea of spiritual understanding was a little different. And Charles Fillmore includes a quote from Albert Einstein, who describes it as knowing what we know without knowing how we know it. And I love that, because how many times have we been going through life and all the the common sense knowledge might be one thing, but we know something else, and we know it with a depth and a power that makes a huge difference if we act on that compared to with maybe what someone else thinks we should be doing. Well, our other co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore, writes about spiritual understanding as well. One of her books is called How to Let God Help You. And in that book, she says to grow in spiritual understanding, to grow in this inner knowing, that we are to become as a little child and let the universal spirit of good teach us. She mentions how there has been a running to and fro among humans that will never cease as long as we try to explain spiritual things with our intellect. And she suggests that we do this. She says, listen to the stillness within your own soul. Don't bother about what others may think or say about you. Know that you are God's child, with ability along all lines, and with freedom to do whatever you really wish to do. And then she says this. This is the way to distinguish the real from the unreal. This is the way to experience the promise of a new heaven and earth. This is the new Jerusalem. You know, that phrase, the New Jerusalem, that comes right out of our ancient Christian scripture. If we look to the Revelation of John, you find a book that if you take it at face value, it can be a little confusing. I don't know if anyone's ever spent any time with that book, but it has a lot of strange imagery and, I don't know, I'm not very graphic, sometimes violent stuff in there. But the scholars of the Bible tell us that the intention of the writers of that book at the time it was put together was to reassure people who were feeling oppressed and to show them and tell them that even if things are really bad right now, they're going to get better. And so in the midst of all this weird imagery and these strange things that are going on in this book, where if you look at it at the surface level, it's kind of hard to take in, we find these words. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem. And I heard a loud voice saying, see, I am making all things new. And I don't know about all of you, but there have been times in my life where I thought things were supposed to be a certain way, and then it turned out they weren't that way. And sometimes those circumstances and those difficulties almost felt like they were squashing the life out of me. And I really didn't know how to get from where I was to where I wanted to go. And I've tried to apply all my brain power to the situations and figure them out and figure out the path forward. And it's only been when I have taken the time away, when like Myrtle says, listen to the stillness within my own soul and just pause and come apart for a bit, that I've been able to open myself to those ideas and those thoughts that come to me when I let go of outer ideas. I let go of other people's ideas for me. And that seems to just open a new way as I go forward in life. I was reminded of a person recently who has a really good story about doing this. His name is Phil Hansen, and he is an artist. And from when he was very young, he was born in 1979, he loved art. And he knew that's what he wanted to do with life. He wanted to make art, and he was, taking all the art classes he could in high school, and he found out about this certain art technique called pointillism. Anyone ever heard of pointillism? It's the results of that kind of work are amazing. So beautiful and so detailed and so creatively expressive, but also at the same time requiring an intense intellectual focus to get the result. And he started doing that work from when he was in high school. He said, this is my destiny. This is the thing I'm supposed to do in life. And he set out and he made all those tiny dots on paper, and he was making some beautiful artwork. And he went off to art school, and he was still very committed. He was doing his pointillism. Well, what started happening was that he was having trouble with his wrist. And he was actually in pain when he was trying to do this work that he felt like he was born to do. And his dots didn't look like dots anymore. They looked like tadpoles. He couldn't even draw a straight line because his hands were shaking so much. And he got so frustrated that he left art school altogether. His life got very small. And at a certain point, with taking that time away, he knew it came back to him what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to do art. He didn't know how he was going to do it, but he thought, if I'm going to get art supplies, I need a job. So he went out and he got a job. And his first paycheck, he went to the art supply store and he bought everything he could find, everything he could get with his paycheck. And he took all that stuff home and he thought about what to do, and he couldn't think of anything. He was totally blocked. And then he realized that he probably needed to stop trying to figure it out intellectually. That maybe he should just relax and let the inspiration come. Well, one day, he was in Starbucks and doing what we do in Starbucks. And he asked himself a question. Well, I wonder what kind of art I can make using only $1 worth of art supplies. And he was looking around Starbucks, and he asked him if the cups were free. And they gave him 50 cups. And he took them home, and he used under $1 worth of pencils and made an incredible work of art with pencils and Starbucks cups. And this got him started. He thought, there's lots of ways I can make art. He experimented with using a push pin and making art on a banana by giving it a tattoo. He experimented with all kinds of ways of doing art. He started, because he couldn't do pointillism with tiny little dots. He started getting big canvases and putting paint on his hand and doing karate chops. And what emerged were these beautiful portraits. He put big canvas on the floor and he got paint on his feet and he walked around and he made his portraits that way. Didn't bother his hand wasn't in pain anymore. And at one point he had the thought of all the inspiration that he'd had over the years for what he was doing. And he wanted to give tribute to all those people, who'd inspired him. And so he had a flash of inspiration, and he said, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll do time-lapse video. I will paint on my own chest pictures of 50 inspirations that I've had throughout my life. And he painted one after the other on his own chest, and he'd paint over, put down another one, painted over and put down another one on time-lapse video. And then when he peeled it off finally, he cut his own profile and laid it out. And that video that he posted on YouTube has millions of views. He eventually became the official artist for the Grammy Awards. His story continues to inspire people. That shift from the intellect to that spiritual understanding has opened up a whole new life of art and creative expression for him. We all have times where we have setbacks. We have things happen that we don't always know the way out. But when we take that time to ourselves and really let ourselves reflect and recharge, it lights our spiritual torch again. I was reminded recently of a story of another person. Her name is Tony Carter, and she actually is in leadership at the Unity Church in Roseville, California. And she wrote a book. And she's retired now, but she taught 7th and 8th grade level for her career. And 16 years of that was at Folsom Prison. She would teach the prisoners who were about to be released. And a part of her teaching there was that she, every 2 years, she trained a new teaching assistant. And, you know, under any circumstances, it might be tough to teach 7th and 8th, grade level. But there it was particularly difficult. And she knew from her own experience as an African American woman some of the inequities of the system. She knew, because she lost her brother to murder, how much it affected the families left behind, but also how it harmed the person who did the act. But she also knew that all the security, all the safety measures that were in place there were important for everybody's safety. And it wasn't easy doing the work that she did there. And over the years, working with all these different assistants that she trained to help her in her classroom, she had some that were really positive and they were really helpful, and then there were the other ones that weren't that way. And they made life really hard for her and everyone else who passed through there. But at a certain point, she had the opportunity to train and work with a young man who, he just had a way about him that was different from a lot of the others she had worked with. He continued to maintain his innocence in conversations, and that was not true of most people in the prison once they got there. His name was Frankie, and, she had a healthy dose of doubt for anyone who said anything to her in there. But over time, as she got to know him, she learned more about his story. And he was 16 years old when he was convicted of murder. And he was put in CYA until age 22, and then he was transferred to Folsom Prison. And he was talking to her about how he felt like he was invisible to people who were on the outside. And he had a long list of family and friends and relatives that he was always trying to get someone to help him, advocate for him, to challenge his conviction. And he would get so down every time he thought he had a lead, and then people would pull back and say no. And Tony would say to him, well, just remember, with God, all things are possible. And, and she would say that, and he would just kind of be off to himself for a while. And then he'd come back recharged and ready to move forward. And time after time, he kept trying to get someone to advocate for him. And when the 2 years were up and she was going to be expected to train someone else, after that positive experience she had with Frankie, who always brought a lot of creativity and positivity to the classroom, she just thought, I don't want to go through this again. I don't think I'm going to meet another person here like him. And so she planned to retire. And he said to her before she retired, he said, would it be possible for you to be my advocate on the outside? Would it be possible for you to find someone to challenge my conviction? And her intellect said no. There's nothing she could do, and things were just the way they were going to be. But her spiritual understanding would not let her go. She knew there would be no ethical constraints once she retired to be an assistant and an advocate. And so she took a copy of his file with her when she left. Well, it took her a few months just of resting after retirement before she could think about doing anything. But at a certain point, she thought, okay, now how am I going to do this? Who am I going to contact? And her brain was going with all kinds of ideas on who she could reach, who she could ask to help. And she just was about the end of her rope because she kept being disappointed. She kept seeing what he had told her about how people inside prison become invisible to those on the outside. And finally, one week, she was going to go visit a friend in San Francisco. And she had an invitation to go to this prison volunteers get-together. And even though she was retired, she still liked to support those volunteers because they made such a positive difference for people who were inside. And she didn't want to go. Her intellect said, no, I want to get there before the traffic gets bad. I don't want to. But in her quiet time, the idea would not let her go. And so she went off to the volunteers get-together, and there was a big circle of chairs. There was lots of places for people to sit, but she went and sat down, and someone else came in and sat right next to her, all those chairs to choose. And during like a Q&A and introductions, she found out the person who sat next to her was a deputy public defender for the state of California. And Toni got excited. She started telling this woman all about Frankie's case. And the woman kept speaking from her lawyerly intellect, saying this and that, and Toni kept responding and saying, well, but there's this. And well. So by the time they were on their way, the woman said, okay, well, here's my business card. Send me a copy of his case, and I'll look it over. And so before Toni headed off to San Francisco, she got a copy off to this attorney. And when she came home, she had a phone call from that same person who had read through the case and was very excited because the conviction was based on an eyewitness testimony. And the woman said, a drive-by shooting at night, the science says there's no possible way there can be an accurate eyewitness testimony. There was no DNA evidence. There was no gun discovered. Frankie was home in bed when he was arrested. She got excited, and she started asking one person after another to take the case pro bono. She couldn't find anyone. So after a year of attempting again and again with all her things she could think of, she took the case herself. She undertook a year of investigation, and she tracked down every lead and every witness. And she found out that the eyewitness was now saying they did not see the crime. Finally got a trial date, and there they were in Los Angeles County. Frankie was transported to the LA County Jail. And it was the worst experience of incarceration he'd ever had in his life, because his case was pointing out corruption by the department that ran that jail. Every day he was in the trial, courtroom, and witnesses were coming up, and then every night he was back in solitary confinement. And it was like an emotional roller coaster for him. But he made good use of that time in the silence. And as the trial days went by, every single witness recanted their testimony. And at a certain point, the district attorney said, Frankie has proven his innocence. And the judge overturned the conviction. Frankie, after intense lobbying by his attorney for 3 days for them to let him out of this jail, had his freedom again. He was able to fulfill his dream and go to college. And he's living the life of freedom that he always wanted. Life's an adventure. For some of us, it's harder than others. And if it feels like it's squashing us, if it feels like it's taking away all of our spiritual inspiration, we need to use our intellect. We need to do our best to figure things out. But if it doesn't get us where we want to go, let's remember to take the time apart. Let's remember to tap in to that universal spirit of good, because the ideas will come. And when we act on those without regard for what other people think of us, it opens up a whole new world. I'm so grateful to be remembering this with all of you today. Bless you, friends.
She asked me to play a little something before her meditation. So I jotted down some words. I haven't made the melody yet. So. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need. Again. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need. My heart is filled with understanding. Love and peace are all I need.
Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, well, if you're comfortable, we're going to have a time of meditation, and I do invite you to close your eyes if that feels peaceful to you. But if it doesn't, you can always gaze forward, perhaps at the candles, but let your eyes look gently at what lies before you, at what lies within if our eyes are closed, or what lies before us if our eyes are open. Gentleness. We all deserve gentleness. And we have had experiences in our lives. We have all had experiences, and some were uplifting and wonderful, and some have felt like they've brought us down low. But somehow, with wherever we've been, with whatever life has brought us in recent times or in our distant past, we can always come back to this quiet place, this place of reflection, this place of remembering the good, for even in the midst of difficulties, even if we've forgotten, we know we can always remember again those times in our lives where our spiritual spark was shining bright. And we can allow that spark to ignite in our minds and hearts today. And somehow, as we take this time apart, we make room for it to shine. With every breath we take, we feel the relaxation wash over us. Whatever our rate of breathing, whether it's deep or shallow, every breath reminds us of the magic and the power of spirit. Breath happens without us even trying. Our heart beats without any conscious effort on our part. Inspiration, nourishment, abundant life are always expressing through us. And we know, we always know what we need to know as we rest in the silence. And we are grateful. Grateful for this time together today. Grateful for remembering. Because there are things we've come into this world knowing deep in our heart. And somehow together, whatever our journey has been to this point, we remember it again. We remember that truth. The truth that has always been written on our hearts. That we are the beloved of God, in whom God is well pleased. We're grateful for answered prayer. We're grateful that our way is revealed as we move forward individually and collectively to a better time, to greater things. For we know that the best is yet to come. We say thank you, God, for this abundant good, now flowing forth and meeting every need, want, and desire. And so it is, and so it always shall be. Amen.